Year 3 at Baylor is coming. My friend Nicki Collen is here to talk all about it. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal. I want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. You guys keep showing up. Over 100,000 listeners last month, the month before that, the month before that. We keep on growing, and we really appreciate showing up for us the way we show up for you 6 days a week. Of course, it is not just me. It is the incredible team over at thenexthoops.com, where we had over 1.3 million readers last month alone. Just a beautiful thing to see that we've built this place for women's basketball, and you guys keep coming here. Make sure you support it. $9 a month, $72 a year. It keeps the lights on. It sends my writers all over the place covering this great game. And somebody who we have covered at numerous levels, at the WNBA level, at the collegiate level, now in her third year coaching at Baylor, the great Nicki Collen. Nicki, it's delightful to see you. I can't tell you how often I hear from different folks around the game about your impact. We'll obviously talk about this current Baylor team, but just covering the New York Liberty with Betnijah Laney, who talks about the way in which you transformed her career. Someone who's been coaching this long, how much does that pleasure just drive you every day with the work that you do?
Oh, it's kind of amazing watching the Liberty Sun series. I really didn't want it to end. I didn't even know how to pull. Betnijah hasn't been in this situation to go to the finals and to see her impact that series the way she did. I think, I'm not always paying attention to who's on the cover of this or who's on the cover of that. I just know, having coached Betnijah, you want a Betnijah on your team. You want someone who's going to play both sides of the ball, who's going to defend, who's going to make the right play. She can be aggressive offensively, but she'll make the right pass. So seeing her out there, seeing Alyssa Thomas, who I got the luxury of coaching for a couple years, and really just it just was a fun series to watch for me. So I love seeing the progress of the game, people really paying attention to this game. I know coaching in the W, we were always trying to find media outlets to care about us, because when you're in that space, you're coaching the best basketball in the world on the women's side. And you pour your heart and soul into it, and you want people to care. You want people to pay attention and really care about it the way that you do. And so I think the college game has always gotten a little bit more of that, but I think we're seeing that across the women's game in general. And I think we're going to see that as some of these college stars move on to the W, I think. And with expansion, right, and all the things going on, I think all of that is amazing for the growth of women's basketball. So I've always said I fell in love with the game when I was a fifth grader, and where that little orange ball has taken me, the people it's allowed me to meet, traveling to Italy and Greece this summer with my team. It's so amazing that so much of who I am is tied to that ball in some way. So yeah, I love this game. I love it, at kind of every layer of the game, the relationships, the X's and O's. I know that EuroLeague starts today, so I'm a nerd. I'm a basketball nerd who loves to talk about the game, watch the game, coach the game. And I'd still play the game if I could.
What do you ever get involved playing it on the practice side of things? You guys were down some significant numbers with all the injuries you had last year. Did you?
Yeah, no, I'm smart enough to know, a game of horse. Yes. Or maybe run to the corner and take a three, but I'm not really at the point. I'm really good in drill work, coming off the ball screen and hitting rollers and doing that kind of stuff. But no, I'm actually about to get surgery on my plantar fasciitis tendon. So I gotta, I'm not very good at slowing down, but I definitely have hit the point where I'm smart enough to know, like, I'm one dumb thing away from like an Achilles tear. So, like I have to, I'll shoot against you, like I don't think there's anyone that can beat me in like a 3-point shootout, but yeah, I don't want to play any defense.
The Sabrina Ionescu of horse is what.
Okay. Yes. Fair. Yeah.
That
No,
was-
I feel good about her beating me after watching that 3-point shootout. I'm pretty confident I would lose that matchup.
It'd be one I'd pay to watch. I'll put it
Yeah.
that way. Well,
That is one of the most amazing things I really have watched in women's basketball. Like, effortless.
it is amazing. And what's amazing even more so is how often she's doing it in game conditions. I mean, she may have had, I mean, this is parenthetical, but just the best volume shooting year anyone's had in the history of the WNBA, what she just did.
The depth, the limited space, I mean, teams are trying to run her off the line. So her ability to, and really transform herself, from a ball dominant player a year ago to really playing with Stewie and playing with Courtney Vandersloot, who's, a true point guard. Like, she's, I'm not saying that that's what she wanted. It's obviously been successful, but she's made it look really, really easy. And so a credit to that team in general. They are really, really fun to watch.
No doubt. There are number one overall picks who wouldn't have been willing to buy into that kind of team concept and change and roll the way Sabrina Ionescu did. So it's fascinating to see it. But also fascinating, and something that I am compelled by, is the idea that your team, as designed, is now starting to come together. And, for those who don't know, let's just kind of take everybody through the history very briefly. Last year, an NCAA tournament team, but a challenging season in just about any way you can define it. Again, 20 wins, trip to the NCAA, so the second round, having to go to Stores, coming off the year before, and a team in year one there, where you went 28-7, a 2 seed overall, lost to a South Dakota team that, quite frankly, was criminally underseeded. I mean, we're seeing, the mastermind of that team is in Minnesota now. And we had Dawn on the program a couple of weeks ago. But just thinking about that year and all that you accomplished, you did it without Dre'Una Edwards, who, we've been on the podcast, I've been clear about this, should have played. Should have been able to play. And that's sort of the easiest way to put it. Aisha Blackwell navigating injury all year and trying to figure out, but everyone was banged up. Sarah Andrews, who is the maestro of this team, was banged up. As you look at this team coming in, and we'll get into some of the newcomers as well, but how much more depth do you just feel like you have coming into this season for yourself?
Yeah, I think the beauty of last year, as challenging as it was, and as much as we had to literally throw Fauntleroy and Little Page Bugs into the fire, and I'm not saying they didn't want it. Every freshman wants to play, but having to play against Maddie Siegrist and Ashley Jones and Maddie Williams, WNBA draft picks, night in and night out at that position, as freshmen, to be out there late in games, because Caitlin Bickle had a tendency to get in foul trouble and foul out. For the two of them to be in late in games against Michigan, and all these moments, Iowa State, where they couldn't play like freshmen, and I think. I'm super proud of last year's team. I mean, certainly we thought it might look different as the season went along, but when the season ended, I had very few regrets in terms of how we managed that team and what I thought we got out of them, considering everything that happened and the excitement of how well those freshmen performed. And what that would mean going into year two, when naturally freshmen, some coaches will say the best thing about freshmen is they become sophomores, because they understand not just the basketball side of things, but how to live away from home, how to manage a collegiate academic load, how to, it's a new space for all of them. And so they go into year two and they've played and they have confidence and they feel like they understand the reads when to pick and pop and when to slip and, kind of all those things that seem simple, but they're not when you're freshman and you're put into a new system. And so, bringing back, Dre and Asia, Sarah hasn't been healthy since probably February. And so trying to get her back, I think our ability to have some depth to play, what I like to say, like we can play Golden State Warrior small ball with Dre at the 5 where she can shoot it. I can invert her. I can flare. I can do Stewie type things and get her into space. But also be big with our 6'7" freshman Letty, our sophomore Kyla, and we could play 3 small guards. We can, we're probably never going to be big at the point. I don't really have a point guard option that you would say is a big point guard, but we can be big at the 2, 3, 4, and 5, or we can be 6 foot at the 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the ability to have packages for players in certain situations to try to take advantages of defenses, to be able to switch at the defensive end. Like, I think we can do some of the things I thought we were going to be able to do that we really had to scrap. And we just did. Like, you go in with this idea of what you want to do and the delay actions and the flow actions and what we can do with bigs that can handle and pass on the perimeter. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, I can't do that now. And so I think we navigated that last year, but I think it's made us all the better going into this year.
It's going to be fascinating. I want to get into the gritty details of how those parts come together. We're going to do that more in segment 2, but first, Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. Now, FanDuel's got an offer, but I need to caution you, you may not want to use it for my New York Giants, okay? They have new customers an opportunity to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. And again, as it pains me to say it as a Giants fan, there are other teams that you might want to use this on instead. $150 if your team wins. I mean, I guess Daniel Jones is coming back, but even so, let's be smart about this. So if you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. It's easy to use. The app has spreads, player props, over-unders, and much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON. FanDuel.com, official sports betting partner of the NFL. So back with Nicki Collen and talking about, I don't want to jump off of those freshmen, now sophomores, before we highlight a little of what they did under those conditions. And you said it really nicely in terms of how they were kind of thrown in and maybe a little bit ahead of time. What I keep coming back to is how efficient they were when they did it. So if you go by points per possession last year on that team, Caitlin Bickle is your top performer at 0.94. Bella Fauntleroy is right there at 0.93. And Dariana Little-Page-Bugs, 0.92. So you had right away some players as freshmen who were almost point per possession, which to me is a remarkable thing before you get into the fact that you had to kind of mix and match their roles all season. What was it you think that allowed them to be as efficient offensively right away as they were?
Yeah, I think obviously with the two of them, they're very different. They play similar positions, but their strengths are very different. I think Bella's, for her, it was more driven by the volume of threes. Allows your point per shot to go up. And I think she made them, when we ran actions for her, she started slow, but really picked up steam from the arc as the season went along. We started the season playing her all September, October at the 3. And by the end of the year, she was guarding nothing but 5s, and single-handedly played a huge role in our comeback against Alabama in terms of shot making and key rebounds. And so, I think she has the ability to go back and play the 3 and really get to mismatches in the post at the 3. Asia was really more comfortable at the 4. We determined kind of in the fall. And so, that was kind of the idea behind that. Then all of a sudden, Caitlin got hurt, and we were just shifting like nonstop last fall with them. I think with Bugs, she knows her spots on the floor. She just, and I think what we did well, to give our staff credit, is we got her in space where she could be successful. She's not going to win the strength award, but it's so we didn't put her in a lot of, hey, we're going to post her up, but getting her in slips and on the move and picking and rolling, like she got most of her shots inside of 5 feet. She was really efficient inside of 5 feet. Where her growth comes. And I think where we can get her to a point per shot is she only shot 25% outside 5 feet. Right. So all of a sudden you drive that up to 40%, she's going to be over a point per shot because her pivot foot around the rim is really, really good and has gotten better. We spent a lot of off season working on both those guys. Traveled a lot on catches. Like if they caught it on the lane line, wanted to rip and drive it, they got called for travels quite a bit. And oftentimes they traveled and they didn't get it called. It was one of those, like, hey, why was it good this time and it wasn't? It was like, because they didn't blow the whistle, but ultimately they could have. So, can we do a good job of always catching it, ready to shoot it, with good balance and really work on that footwork. And so, I think that's something, even when we were overseas, Bugs had 30 and 20 in our first game over there. And it was the most wild, physical, kind of out of control game as any game I've ever coached in. But she was good because she doesn't fight power with power, Bella and Asia, like, are heat-seeking missiles, like trying to put a body on a body. Bugs is like, all right, if you're going to be that physical with me, I'm going to spin off you. I'm going to step around you. I'm going to, like, she made it look easy. Just because she don't want to play that way, and so she uses her length and her footwork to play off and around people, as opposed to through them. And so she may not get to the line a ton, but she's going to get to the line because she's going to get on the offensive glass. She's going to take it up, I think her growth is going to come, as she gets better off the bounce in that mid-range game. And then I'm telling her to fire it from 3, this fall. And we've got to see, like, I don't expect her to shoot 40%, but if I can get her to 30%, I'll feel really, really good about her making a key shot in a key moment. Cause that's kind of how Liz was for us. Like, it wasn't like suddenly she was a great 3-point shooter just because I let her shoot. It was, hey, if you're not going to guard her, she has to be confident enough to step up and make it in a key moment that could be the difference between winning and losing a big game.
And also obviously puts the subsequent possessions in a place where they've got to respect it, where it's got to change the gravity on the floor. The other thing that you talked about with her is that you say that she's not banging necessarily as much. Her defensive rebounding percentage was still north of 26. I mean, and that
she goes, she is going to go, and she could be, she was almost a double-double and right. And it was amazing how many balls she got her hands on and wasn't able to pull, so it comes from core strength in general, as she generally gets stronger and more confident. But so much of that is she's in unbelievable shape. She's just one of those players that doesn't look tired even when she is. And so, when somebody else is tired, she's got a huge advantage because she is going to go to the glass on every possession. And, you have to, as a coach, people have different philosophies. I'm not a big believer in, like, you have to rebound one certain way. Mm-hmm. If you have Rebecca Brunson, you're like, you don't need a box out. Just go get the ball. Like, it's learning, like, who needs to hit and hold. Caitlin Bickle needed to hit and hold, but Bugs is like, just go get it. Be quick to the ball. Like, I don't want you trying to search and hold somebody off who's stronger than you when you can just use your quickness and length to go get it. And so it's really, I'm just not a big believer in, like, one size fits all. And you have to figure out what works with your team and what works individually. And players just have to understand you're not giving one person a pass, mm-hmm. Like, it's not, oh, she doesn't have to box out, but I do. Well, you all are going to have different constraints and things that, you have more of a leash in certain areas than others. And the whole point is we're trying to put you in a position where you're going to individually be successful. And therefore we're collectively going to be successful and win. And so we don't do it just for fun. We try to figure out strengths and weaknesses and maximize strengths and minimize weaknesses and be really, really good and have them understand why we do what we do. And they don't always, but you try. I think that's a big part of being great. The great ones know why. At least eventually, they may not start that way, but they get that way.
No doubt about it. So you have something, and we'll finish on Dre being back in a moment, but you have something that a lot of coaches don't have, which is a 6'7" freshman, Leyva Santiago. I'm wondering, number one, how much of a luxury that feels like for you. I mean, look, even getting 6'7" players in the WNBA is not an easy thing to do. I think you had Imani, I think 1 year in Atlanta, but it's a relative rarity. So here at the collegiate level, what do you see out of Letty early on, and how big a role can she play for you?
I think the role is going to depend on her fitness level. In all honesty, like I think she's someone. Even in the little bit, we played overseas, I challenged her. I'm like, you made the most impact, both positively and negatively when you were in the game. When you were fresh, she scores around the rim. She can use either hand. She catches the ball. And she's super smart. And you don't usually say that sometimes about freshmen, especially freshman post players. But, sometimes it almost looks like she's being a little lazy. But it's like she's just smart, like she's going to naturally want to play drop coverage, like she's going to, but she tracks the ball really, really well. So pick and roll defense, oftentimes big kids really, really struggle in it. She understands angles. She keeps people in front of her. Like, we're probably not going to trap with her. We're probably not going to hard hedge with her. But we're going to play to her strengths when she's in. And she really excels. I mean, the advantage of an international kid is that she's grown up in a system where she's played in pick and rolls, like it hasn't always been like, hey, you're really tall, go down to the block and we're going to play for round one, so she will go down and bang, but it's still not what she wants to spend her time doing. So, but she gives us a great target to roll to the rim and to be a rim protector. And so when she's playing hard and she's fresh, she really, really impacts us, but she's that typical when she gets tired, it's like you can't get her out fast enough because once she's done, and so really getting her in that mode of, okay, you can't be done. You have to give me, I'm going to get you a sub, but you got to go one more possession, and one possession will turn into two, and two will turn into three. But just even in her conditioning and down and backs and things like that, she's come a long way. And so she has a chance to be really, really good, really good.
It is fascinating to me. And I do want to finish with Dre'Una Edwards because of everything that happened and just what it feels like. But I would be remiss not to talk about, I'm just going to call you on it. This is, a real cupcake schedule. You're not playing anyone challenging early on, Utah, Harvard, Oregon, Miami. You got neutral site against Providence and Jose Fernandez, South Florida, all before conference play. I guess two parts to it. One is, do you just like stress? And two, how much do you intend to learn about your team before you even open in conference play against, Texas?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, if I'm being like really, really honest, it's kind of funny because the Utah game was supposed to be a part of the preseason NIT, which kind of fell apart.
Right.
And so we were supposed to get two kind of more buy-in games leading up to Utah.
Right.
And instead we're playing Providence and South Florida. So we maybe didn't go in to have it be quite that challenging. But I think it's a really cool opportunity. I think the thing about the Big 12 that I've said from the beginning is that we have a league that has a lot of differing styles of play. I think we're very different from the SEC that way, and I certainly scouted them all when I was in the pros, and there were pros and cons with every league in terms of what you saw as a scout. But the Big 12, Iowa State doesn't play like Texas. And, you just, Brandon runs great stuff at Kansas, and Ayoka Lee's back at Kansas State. And so you're going to face, someone that can go get 50 on you. And so because of that, it was a unique ability to play different styles. And I appreciate that. You appreciate that the Harvards and the SMUs, like, those are really good teams. And I think people don't always understand that. We can all look at UConn's schedule and go, whoa, like their non-conference schedule is kind of who's who in women's college basketball. But I think 6 of our 11 are in the top 100. And so because of that, it's not like you get to show up and just, hey, let's try this tonight and let's try this tonight. No, we're going to have to show up and compete. And I think if our players told us when we did military training, we brought the Marines in, and one of the things they said their goal is to have Final Four standards, in everything they do. And it's like, well, if you're going to have Final Four standards, you got to compete, night in and night out. And you got to want to understand that, an in-state rivalry like SMU, like if you don't show up and are on your game, they will beat you, as they did with USF last year, and so I think we're going to have different styles. I have a ton of respect. I watched Jose up close last year in the Gulf Coast Showcase, and they're going to run 75 different plays, and they're all going to take 20 seconds to develop. And at any point, if you fall, or run into a screen, someone's going to get an open three. And so he does such a good job. So I'm excited to see what it does. I mean, Utah was an air ball free throw away from maybe the Final Four a season ago, and they have everybody back, plus, good players coming in from the portal. So that one is, the multitude of ways that they can beat you, whether it's inside with Peely or from the arc, and they get you in rotations and then can make you look foolish. So, it's going to be a challenge. But I do think we were rewarded a year ago playing a difficult schedule, even if it was just one line. People had us in the 8-9 game, and we were a 7, and I think it was the nature of what our road wins were, but the schedule we played. And so we're just not going to be afraid to play a tough schedule because we do want to be prepared when the season ends.
To me, if you're making a list of favorites to win the national championship, Utah's got to be on that list, flat out. Nobody played LSU tougher in the NCAA tournament last year, and had things gone different for Jenna Johnson, who was a terrific free throw shooter. We had Lynn Roberts on the program just recently talking about it, and it's just that team is epic. But even SMU, like you said, that was a dogfight for you guys last year down.
Yeah, it sure was.
So SMU, really quality team, and Harvard, the top half of the Ivy League. I mean, this would be a whole other show. Top half of the Ivy League, right there with the power conferences.
Yeah.
So
Columbia was amazing. Obviously, they had some kids that had to move on, but watching them even against Kansas in the NIT championship, like phenomenal game, phenomenal environment. That's what's special, those kind of games. People don't realize how good Kansas is. Yes. And what this COVID year means. They've got 3 kids in there. They're going to be in their starting lineup that are COVID seniors. And so continuity matters. And when you're coming off a win and you've built up what the NIT can do with home crowds and building towards the next season. We saw what it did in Arizona a few years ago. Like, it's just it goes back to what we started about talking about women's basketball and the growth. Like, when people come see it, and whether it's because they came to Kansas because it was being promoted and it was the NIT championship or the semifinals, it's like, once you're there and you see it, you want to come back, and it's the environment that everyone's trying to create and should be created. In our league, we're always going to be talking about how the Big 12 men's league is the best league in the country, and it's been the top net league since 2014. And, they have all these narratives that we hear all the time. Our league was pretty dang good last year, and it's going to be really good this year. And even when we lose Oklahoma and Texas, when we bring in Arizona and Utah, and Arizona State's going to rebound, and Colorado got over the hump. So you're adding 4 more teams. That 3 of the 4 were NCAA tournament teams this year. I mean, there's probably never been more energy around the University of Colorado, like ever, with
Mhm.
Dion and being in the national spotlight. And
Yeah.
Boulder's always been an amazing place. And so, I think it's an exciting time for our league. And I just know that 2 years ago, a little before this, but when we first heard that Texas and OU, I mean, I had been hired, and a month later, OU and Texas announced they're going to the SEC, and I'm having Zooms with Scott Drew and Dave Aranda and Mac Rhodes about, okay, are we keeping the Big 12 together? Like, would you guys prefer to be in the ACC or the Pac-12 if we have to lean one way? And so to be where we're at now, as much as a traditionalist, we would love to have maybe what we had 30 years ago. We also know, like, you got to survive and thrive. And so I think Brett, the commissioner of the Big 12, and the leadership have put the Big 12 in an amazing position to have a sustainable model and be successful. So, it's crazy to think that the Pac-12 is basically dissolving at the end of this year.
108 years of tradition. But like you said, the Big 12 is a clear winner here. And it's hard not to look at it. And you and I, we look at it through a women's basketball lens, even though ultimately the decisions are not made for that reason,
Right.
unfortunately. But it's a big win for women's basketball when you look at the net and you look at, bringing in Adia Barnes and, bringing in Utah. I mean, that alone is just a huge thing. But like you said, there's a real opportunity for the Big 12 to be a power for many years to come because of the way this all shook out. And I know, some pretty vaunted programs are going to have to figure out things that you're not going to have to figure out. Tara's going to have to figure out. We got a visitor here, which is very nice. But it's fascinating to see, and I can't wait for it. I can't.
Yeah.
But before we go, and we're a little beyond time, but I would be remiss not to talk about this. Dre'Una Edwards, who, like I said, I've reported on it. We've talked about it on the program. Was not given a release to be able to play. Could have been given a release. Kentucky wasn't obligated, but she was in limbo now last year because of it. Now you got her back. Take me through, first of all, just has it been emotional? What has it been like having her there? And then what her impact is on the floor? Because we know she's a shot maker. We know she is a legit star.
Yeah, I think last year was a mental and emotional challenge for her. I think there was no question that we went into the process knowing that the worst case scenario was you sit a year to play a year. So that's what happened, and you have to prepare for worst case scenario in that situation. And I'm really proud of how she handled herself. She's gotten her degree. She's working on her master's in social work. So a lot of really positive things, have come out of it. Growth opportunities. I think kind of that whole idea that she knows this is her one chance. And so how you approach the situation when this really is last chance you, or like this year you're trying to meet your goals now. But I think it was obviously disappointing. Like, I know, and I guess it's because of how much I love basketball. These women have a finite amount of time to play the game. It just, their body at some point is going to say, you can't play anymore. Or you're not good enough to play anymore, or you need to play on the rec league, or it's time to play pickleball like the rest of us are doing. But it's like, it hurts me to think that we don't give people the opportunity to play the game, and I don't think I could ever do that, and I know that for her, it was just hard to have someone say, you need to sit out. Like, I don't want to help you, and because I think in her eyes, even if she had not been a perfect teammate, not been a perfect student athlete there, that she had done some really, really good things and it helped that team to a championship. And so, I think we get a motivated Dre'Una Edwards. I mean, I think that's the good part for me and for Baylor and her teammates is they're going to get a really, really focused, really motivated teammate who has the ability to do a lot of the things that are going to make us hard to guard, and she's a better defender than people maybe think because she's a little like Caitlin in that she understands strengths and weaknesses, and she's going to take away your left shoulder turn. She's going to space you if she needs to space you. She's going to deny you if she needs to deny you. Like she just a big part of defense is not just athleticism or length, but it's are you in the right spot and do you win the leverage battle? And I think it's something that she's capable of doing. So I just love her because she has the ability to be someone that you can play to because she really can score in a variety of ways, but you can also play through because she understands what we're doing and why we're doing it and really picks up on concepts and is an encourager, which is a big thing to me. She's not a player that spends a lot of time being down when she misses a shot or, which is the way it should be for everyone, but just not the nature of young people, and so I think there's a consistency to how she plays the game that I can count on. And so just as you want a point guard that embodies and understands and is an extension of your head coach, when you have players that understand the game, she's not Alyssa Thomas, nobody is, but has the ability to lead from maybe not a point guard position. And I think that's something she can do on the court.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And her evolution as a player, to be able to see it play out now is something I know so many of us are very excited about. Well, Nicki Collen, it is always great talking basketball or anything with you. Really interested to see how Baylor continues moving forward here in year 3. To our listeners, thank you so much for making us a part of our everyday, that over 100,000 of you show up every single month since May and more than ever in September. Is just a huge credit to my mind for everything that the staff over at The Next is building together. So until tomorrow, we'll be back with you as we always are, 6 days a week. I'm Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful day.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.